Hello, hello. I'm Rabbi Paul Kipnis, rabbi here at Congregation Orami. Rabbi Alana Rabashaw is here also, but maybe right there. And our president, Susie Gruber, and members of our board and our leaders and all of you. Thank you all for coming tonight. What you are going to experience is important, and you know it. That's why you're here, or you're streaming in. Because you know that the question of being Jewish in this world is something that we are all embracing and struggling with, and everybody else is too. Back in the late 1920s, 1927, there was a guy named Edmund Flegg. He was a Jewish-French writer, thinker, and playwright. He wrote something called I Am a Jew. Many of you are familiar with it. I am a Jew because my faith demands of me no abdication of the mind. I am a Jew because my faith requires of me all the devotion of my heart. I am a Jew because in every place where suffering weeps, I weep. I am a Jew because every time when despair cries out, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew because the word of the people Israel is the oldest and the newest. I am a Jew because the promise of Israel is the universal promise. I am a Jew because for Israel, the world is not completed. We are completing it. I am a Jew because for Israel, humanity is not created. We are creating it. I am a Jew because Israel places humanity and its unity above the nations and above Israel itself. I am a Jew because above humanity, the image of the divine unity, Israel places the unity, which is divine. That poem, how many have heard it before? Has been read and studied again and again. No one's really written a new version of it, I think, until this book was written. And sadly, Flegg wrote his piece because of the anti-Semitism rife throughout France and Europe. And we're here again, struggling and trying to figure it out. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Congregation Orami for hosting this. Thank you to the team that I know Debbie will introduce in a couple of minutes. This is Congregation Orami. We hide or get to be not right out there in an office building, and yet this place is bustling with activities. All our services are live streamed, oramilive.com. Come join us in person or online. We're always here. And if you need a rabbi, we get two here who will be glad to schmooze with you. With that, I want to bring up the member of our board who came up with this idea, both of this panel and the entire series that will follow that's still in development. It's my pride and privilege to introduce to you Debbie Pattis. There you go.
Sorry, I'm just so excited to be here. Good evening on behalf of Congregation Orami and our partners with Zibi Media and the Artists Against Anti-Semitism. I'm delighted to welcome you to On Being Jewish Now, the first event in Orami's speaker series. It's complicated, navigating Jewish identity in a changing world. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Debbie Pattis. Combating anti-Semitism and fostering positive connections and conversations about Jewish identity is important to me, not only because I'm a long-term board member here, but also because my daughter, Dani Pattis, who grew up at Orami, is in her second year of rabbinic school. As a mom and a board member and a Jew, I want to contribute to building a safe, tolerant, post-October 7th world that celebrates the contributions of Judaism, where my daughter can practice not only her faith, but her profession. When I approached Rabbi Paul Kipnis and our president, Susie Gruber, about hosting a speaker series on navigating Jewish identity, they were all in. Thank you to them and to all of you for joining us as we explore how Jews can live and lead with openness, courage, resilience, and hope in a changing world. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator and the 3 Jewish authors who generously agreed to share their personal experiences and wisdom with us this evening. On the far right, we have Stacy Bieber, our moderator, and her own fan club, apparently. Stacy attended Boston University as an undergrad and law student. She holds a Master of Law degree in taxation and a Master of Arts in literature. Stacy taught in the English department at Cal State Northridge for 18 years. Currently, she facilitates book clubs at the Skirball Cultural Center, and she also moderates book discussions for private groups, including some with an emphasis on Jewish authors and themes. Thank you, Stacy, for being here with us this evening. Next to Stacy in the green is Elizabeth Silver. She's the author of 2 novels, The Majority and The Execution of Noah P. Singleton, as well as her memoir, The Tincture of Time, a memoir of medical uncertainty. Liz's work has been published in 7 languages and optioned for film. Elizabeth has written for, among others, The Washington Post, The Guardian, The New York Magazine. She teaches creative writing with the UCLA Writers Program and is the founder and director of Onward Literary Mentoring. Thank you. Next, we have Anna Efron Harari. Anna leans into joyful Judaism. She writes about Jewish identity, memory, and the stories that shape our lives. She's the co-author of the best-selling The Amazing Baby Name Book and a contributor to Airmail Weekly and other publications. Anna is now working on her debut novel, I love this title, A Complete and Utter Waste of Time. Welcome, Anna. And finally, we have Dr. Beth Recanati, a board-certified internist who has spent her career focused on improving the well-being of her patients' lives in traditional medical clinics, wellness programs, and now as an author-speaker. Her first book, Braided, A Journey of 1,000 Challahs, earned many awards and was a 2018 finalist for the National Jewish Book Awards. The book has The book has evolved into a workshop series that she has led in 30 cities and 4 countries. Her second book will be out in September 2026. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Thank you so much. Since October 7th, many of us have been reflecting on our own Jewish identity and how to navigate being Jewish. In fact, during Rabbi Kipnis's Yom Kippur service, which I live streamed, he asked, what does it mean to be Jewish today? A question that he raised 8 years ago. But today it's a very different question with the roar of anti-Semitism. Rabbi Kipnis then stated, quote, to be a Jew today is complicated. To be a Jew today is crucial. To be a Jew today is courageous. To be a Jew today is to embody hope in a hopeless time. To be a Jew today is to carry a mission more than 3,000 years old and to remember it matters. So in preparing for today's event, aptly entitled, It's Complicated, Navigating Jewish Identity in a Changing World, I reflected on Rabbi Kipnis's words and today's panel of remarkable women who contributed to the anthology of essays entitled On Being Jewish Now, reflect on their experiences of being Jewish today. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about this book, which will also be for sale in the lobby, and they'll sign it. This book is pretty remarkable. This was a project that was conceived by Zibby Owens. She's the founder of Zibby Media, which includes the daily podcast Totally Booked with Zibby, Zibby Publishing, and Zibby's Bookshop in Santa Monica. She never really planned on being publicly Jewish, which means using your platform to support and advocate for fellow Jews. But after October 7th, she realized that she had this platform and that she couldn't be silent. She, along with some other authors who, after October 7th, were immediately blacklisted and targeted, Jewish authors, there was comments posted which impacted their algorithms. They were banned from participating in events, and other authors canceled on her podcast. She formed Artists Against Anti-Semitism, who has a mission to raise awareness of anti-Semitism in the arts, promote education about Jewish history and culture, and unite the artistic community to build a kinder, brighter, more understanding future. As part of that mission, she conceived the idea for the anthology, and she reached out to Jewish authors and advocates. They had only a couple of weeks to respond and submit their essays because they wanted to get this book out on the first anniversary of October 7th. And within weeks, 75 authors, including the 3 that are sitting here, contributed essays pro bono, sharing their personal stories, with the profits from the book being donated to Artists Against Anti-Semitism. For those of you that are inspired after today, Zibby Owens Publishing is still accepting essays on being Jewish today, and you can submit your own essay, and then it will be part of, I've learned what this is, a Substack, which is like a blog, and also emailed out to people that subscribe to her Substack. And I have information on that, and if you find me after, I'm happy to share that with you. So let's get started with our conversation with Anna, Beth, and Elizabeth. And I thought, as a kind of icebreaker, we kind of talked about this a little bit, we are all wearing Jewish stars. However, prior to October 7th, none of us wore Jewish stars. So I want to hear a little bit about your Jewish star and what prompted you to wear your Jewish star, and how you feel about wearing your Jewish star.
I love this question. Oh, is this on? No. It's on. Hello. Thank you. I love this question. I didn't wear a Jewish star before, but I always wore a chamsa, or I wore something, but it wasn't a Jewish star, and I didn't have one. I think I had like a really, tattered one from my 16-year-old trip to Israel that I got on like Machane Yehuda or something like that. But I'm sorry, Ben Yehuda Street. But I got this one. I'd been looking for a really small, delicate one for the longest time, and we found one at this jeweler in the farmer's market. And it turns out that jeweler was a childhood friend of my sister-in-law, and it was this jeweler that was this Jewish family that had been generation to generation in that spot in the farmer's market, and it was just specifically made. And so it was actually a Mother's Day present for me this past year, and I have not taken it off since, and I love it.
Love that.
So I love that we are all wearing them, and I definitely, I had never worn this before, but I've had it since I was a child. My grandmother bought it probably at the mall in Halone. It's not, it's just some little plastic thing, and it's just been somehow survived in every jewelry box I've ever had. And right after October 7th, just a few days after, I just found it and put it on, and then ran into my sister, a couple days later, and she had done the exact same thing. And hers was a little fancier than mine, but that's okay. And then also at the same time, my mother-in-law gifted me this chain, which is my husband's grandmother's, and that's the Jewish side of his family. And so I wear them together because it's I feel like the two, Jewish grandmothers together, and it just really works out. But I want to say, I am often afraid to wear it. In the summer I went to rural Virginia. It was a very Confederate town, and I was with my children, and and I was like, I'm going to take it off. I'm going to take it off, and then I just kept not taking it off. And there are other times, especially when I'm alone, I just don't want to wear it. And every time that I have that little thing of I'm afraid to wear it, something happens where somebody sees it, and then they share this incredible story, and they're like, here, you hold this story because I know that you can, and it's almost now I'm associating that feeling of fear with oh no, I'm actually excited to be a vessel to hold somebody else's story. And it's Jews and non-Jews that share these stories about, but these really positive, incredible, tragic, whatever stories. And, now I'm starting associating that that fear with just actually an exciting welcoming to be part of this amazing community that we're part of.
I never had any Judaica until after October 7th, and I didn't think about it. I had, and I really didn't wear a lot of necklaces either, come to think of it. But I really wanted to show that I was Jewish without having to stand up and shout. And I wanted a nonverbal cue. And I started looking for a necklace, and I found this. And then I knew I'd done the right thing because my very stylish daughter asked for the same one. So I thought, okay. So we both have our necklaces now. She's better about hers. She never takes it off. And like you, she has fabulous interactions. I'm a little bit more uncomfortable. And sometimes when I travel, I take it off. I took it off when I went to Spain this summer, and then I saw people there wearing them. And I thought, oh, and I'm actually going back to Spain fortuitously in a week, and I'm going to wear it. And I'm really nervous about it. But there's something really great, to your point, about being a vessel for, and being present, and making sure that other people see us that way. So I wear it.
I'm kind of like you. I never wore a Jewish star before, and after October 7th, my daughter and I went and bought Jewish stars, and I did it purposefully because I taught at CSUN at the time, and I was often the only Jewish person in the room. And with the rise of anti-Semitism, I thought it was very important for my students to know that I was Jewish, so that when they heard something that was anti-Semitic, they would have a face to put to a Jewish person and think like, well, you know, Stacy's not like that. Maybe I shouldn't think that way. So I thought that was really important. But I don't always wear it, and maybe I'm going to rethink that. So I thought maybe we could start with Liz. And can you tell us a little bit about your family history, which I feel like it might be a book one day for you.
Yes, happy to talk about it. And so I live here in Los Angeles now, or I have been for 13 years. So I've set some roots down here. But my father and grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and I feel like in my generation, it's usually the grandparents. My grandfather was a Schindler Jew. He was on Schindler's List. My grandmother was in Auschwitz, and then she was on the Wallenberg Exchange, which is the White Buses Initiative, and she was survived in Sweden. Needless to say, my grandfather was much healthier at the end of the war, given his, given the list. But they had my father in 1942, and he in Radom, Poland, and he was the only child to survive the ghetto. And as the story goes, he was kept alive off of sleeping pills and breast milk for the first year of his life, essentially. And the story goes, and the plan was that a friend of theirs, a non-Jewish woman, a Polish woman who was hiding my father's uncle the whole time, was supposed to take in my baby father. They knew they were going to be taken to the camps. And so they had this plan, and right before they were taken away, basically they left the ghetto. It was open. We went and did a family trip about 8-9 years ago, and it was open. They went and they basically left my baby father on the doorstep of this woman. My father has a bit of a Moses complex after this. But they left him on this doorstep, and this woman, Marisha is her name, she got very scared. She got very, very nervous and didn't take him in. So she decided, she took him in, but like a day later brought him to an orphanage, and he was then adopted by a whole other family and raised for the next 2 years in the Polish countryside with a family who had no idea he was Jewish, no idea who he was, no idea about anything. After the war ended, my grandparents went back to Radom because the goal was to find their baby son. They found him because of this woman, kept an eye on him. They got him back. My father didn't recognize these people. They didn't know him. They didn't know them. And then after a lawsuit and blackmail and all of the crazy things that definitely go into a story like this, they got my father back, left to go to Germany, and then came to America. Yeah. Yeah.
That's your novel.
That is.
That's your fourth book.
It is a book, yeah. I've written an essay about it in Lilith magazine, so it's a little bit of it is there, but yeah.
So after October 7th, this really must have hit you differently, because for so many of us, it was horrific, it was scary, but your family had lived through this once before. So can you tell us about your essay, which is called The First Pang, and if you have the book, it's on page 190. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and your experience and your essay and why you chose to focus on what you wrote.
Absolutely. So, The First Pang is about kind of my first experience with anti-Semitism. And I feel like it's something that everybody has at some point. It's that first time you realize, people are treating you different. You are othered, right? It's that first pang that there's something going on that's not the norm, not that you had experienced before. And so I grew up, with this family that, I didn't not know about the Holocaust. And I feel like my generation is that you'd ever remember learning about it because it was just is part of you. It's inherited trauma. And I have a 11 and 9-year-old, and I realized that it's a little more diluted for them. They are learning about it as opposed to not remembering, and the first time they learn. And so I grew up seeing my grandparents, my grandmother with the numbers, hearing about my father, and as I grew up in New Orleans and in Dallas, my parents were there when I was born, and I was the only Jew in my high school. I was apart from my brother, and I kind of took on that role of being I was fine with it, and I was very nervous because when I first moved there, somebody had written, "I hate Jews" and the N-word all over my notebook when I was up in the front of the class giving a talk. And I had never experienced that before. And I had known my whole life, oh, well, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. It can happen again. And I thought, okay, well, this is not that, And so you put it out of your mind. I told a teacher and moved on. But I had always thought about that. And then fast forward 20, 30, I don't know how many years, and my daughter, was in 4th grade here in LA at public school. And we're at, I think it's May, and it was Jewish American Heritage Month, as well as Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Heritage Month. And everybody in her school was, in that month, they were all doing presentations on the respective countries of origin, and she was so excited to learn about all these different countries. And she came home one day and pulled my phone out of my hand, which she never does, and she just had to look it up. She's like, and I said, "What's going on?" She's like, "Is this also Jewish American Heritage Month?" She had no idea because nobody talked about it.
And it's kind of shocking that,
Nobody.
yeah. My kids are older, so I don't really remember elementary school, but I would think that almost in every, right? I would think that almost in every elementary school now, that would be something that would be recognized.
You would think, because every culture is recognized in a different month, and it's a great thing, but they left off Jewish American Heritage Month. And so my daughter was like, I want to do a presentation too. And then she came to our room a little bit later that night, and this is a girl who is done about 20 shows already. She's very comfortable performing and talking in front of people. She's like, "I'm scared. I don't want to take up space. They know that somebody told me not to do it." And my heart pang, it was that first pang. She felt that first pang the same way I felt that first pang. So we said, "I can talk to your teacher if you want." She's like, no, I'll do it. And so she stayed up all night making a PowerPoint presentation. And we didn't even tell her. The lights were on at 11. The lights were on at 12. We didn't stop her. Next morning at breakfast, she showed us. It was like 8 slides about the holidays, the food. The only thing I helped her with were the famous Jews. And I was so nervous driving her to school. And then when I picked her up, I asked her how it went, and she said, "It was so great. My teacher just didn't know." And then after I did the presentation, people said, "Oh, I've had latkes before." So it gave me hope that it was more like what I experienced as the only Jew in high school. Not that there's like a fear, but it's really born out of ignorance, or people just don't know. And so it was kind of like we get to basically be little ambassadors if we can. And to show kind of the beauty and the joy and spread that. And I think that her experience and my experience kind of brought that full circle.
Anna, your experience is a little bit different because tell us about where you grew up and what you were expecting after October 7th in terms of your school community.
First of all, I love the name of this series. It's complicated because, and every time someone says it, I hear it in both my parents' voices. I hear it in my dad's Israeli accent, like, no, it's complicated. And then I hear it in my mom's, like,
That's a good
very
accent, by the way.
jaded affect, Los Angeles, it's complicated. It's a very, and in everything that we're talking about is, and all the more reason that we should be talking about it. I don't know how to succinctly explain it because, I could give a whole, it's so hard to, but basically I grew up secular, completely secular. Like my dad's from Israel, so it's like, we just, if it occurred to him that it was the high holidays that day, we'd go wherever the services were free. And, sometimes I was at Beverly Hills Hotel, sometimes it was Chabad, sometimes it was, and, my mom was just a Christmas tree Jew. Her parents were screenwriters in Hollywood, and I went to a fantastic lecture last year on like what the music industry was like at that time, and it was about like the Jews that wrote Christmas songs, and I related to it from my grandparents' point of view of like this assimilation of, you want to be Jewish because you're seen as smart, you don't want to be too Jewish, so you have a Christmas tree, and what that was like. And all that to say, I didn't think that anti-Semitism was gone. I knew that I was in a very privileged position, but I did not think I was personally ever going to experience it. Between Los Angeles and New York and Tel Aviv, I wasn't ever in I was always surrounded by like smart, intellectual
You were in
Jews.
Dallas and New Orleans.
Exactly.
Where you really feel like you're
and
part of the 0.2%.
Exactly. But I didn't think that I was in the majority. I just knew that I was in these beautiful positions. And I grew up in the Palisades. There was a lot of survivors in our community. And I had the privilege of hearing them speak from a really young age and just hearing like all the details of all their stories. And, the school taught, it wasn't a Jewish school, it was a secular school, but it still, we read every book and everything. And I took that for granted, for sure, and I grew up very liberal and then after 2016, I think I fell into like a polarizing mindset where I judged people who weren't liberal, and I just kind of like, I did this sorting thing where I would like scan what people were saying, and if they said a certain word, I'd be like, okay, you're not with me, and which is backwards because I was trying to be liberal, but they would, if somebody said something bigoted, I was like, okay, you're not my friend, you're my friend, you're in my community, but I'm not going to, if you're sharing a bigoted thought, I'm gonna like put you in this box over there. And when October 7th happened, which is what my essay is about, we were at a progressive charter public school that leased its campus from a conservative temple. And all the people that I had like put in this, not like, I just, the teacher was openly transgender, which I was so excited about because my kids got to, have this normalized experience of somebody, instead of like, learning about it in a book, it was normal. And they just got this amazing teacher that went by they, them and didn't make a big deal out of it, just, was open and proud. And I was just immediately categorized that person as like with me. And then when October 7th happened, luckily my kids weren't in that class anymore, but they took it upon themselves to teach a lesson plan that was just not age appropriate from a biased perspective to a room full of first graders. And it was...
And then posted it.
And then, yeah.
And by the way, I'm not going to have you out the school, but, I did a little sleuthing, and you can quickly Google it.
Yeah.
And you will find lots of articles about the school and what was posted.
Yes. It became this, and that was also what was wild about it, was that all of a sudden these conservative influencers were championing for me, and the people that I thought were my allies just weren't at all. And there was this weirdness where the problem was that they taught a not age-appropriate lesson from a biased perspective. It wasn't what side this teacher took. The problem was that they did something that is brainwashing from either side. They taught incorrect facts at a not age-appropriate level. And they drew a map that was not accurate, but also at the time, the kids didn't even know what California was. Like, they did not know that California was a state. So to then draw a map of this region, so it was just like, but instead of calling out the wrong, the school just did nothing. And then the teacher posted about it in a mean way and, with all the stuff, whatever. It's a very long story. But instead of calling out what was right and wrong, which, I don't think you're allowed to post your children's names if you're a teacher, elementary school teacher. You're not allowed to post images of the school. You're not allowed to post images of the homework. Instead of ever saying that was wrong, it became this political debate, as if we could solve the Middle East crisis in the PTA. And it left the Jews to defend themselves. And, nobody likes an angry Jew who brings up the Holocaust. And it became this, tinder fire of a community that just was completely fraught. And I was I felt like my center of gravity turned upside down. And I didn't know how to find my footing within it. But I couldn't find my footing on either side because, I would be in a conversation and somebody would be like, yes, completely, all Muslims are bad. And I was like, no, we're not there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this lesson plan was terrible. So it was this weird thing. And, one of the gifts of this book is that there was this moment of isolation where I just felt like I was completely alone, and this book has helped me find that roomy center, that it is complicated and that we're all this, and that it's not this polarizing viewpoint. And I got to correct my own behavior about what that polarization was doing to my own brain and my own friendships and my own community, and now I get to navigate it with that knowledge.
One of the lines in your essay that I thought was just so interesting was the anti-Semitic things that people said where they didn't even I can't say they didn't realize, but they acted like they didn't realize. For example, I think you wrote that one of the parents said, oh, the Jews run the school. And by the way, do you want to have a play date after class? And it's it was shocking because these were people that you supported, putting the rainbow flag up, and you supported Black Lives Matters. And then all of a sudden, there was no support at all.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very isolating experience, which has then led me to this amazingly,
And you
community
switched
that
your
I'm in.
kids.
I ended up switching my kids, so it's this huge plot twist that I never thought that I was going to send my kids to a Jewish school, and I was really hesitant to send my kids to a Jewish school. I didn't want to put them in a bubble of like-mindedness, and I called the rabbi that had officiated our wedding and had done the baby namings. As an adult, I found my own relationship with Judaism, and it's been really meaningful and really valuable. But it wasn't, I thought that Judaism was for milestone events. And I met this rabbi, and he was amazing, and he did our wedding, and he did the kids' baby namings, and I was like, okay, the next time we see him is a funeral or a bar mitzvah. And my sister said to me, why don't you call him? And it was Steve Leder, who also has an essay in this book. And, part of me felt guilty. I was like, he's dealing with people whose families are at war. It was still October. It wasn't far after. And, he doesn't want to deal with my little valley crisis. But also, it didn't occur to me that you could just call your rabbi, and I love that you said that. If anybody needs a rabbi, I really I didn't know that your rabbi was for these daily life moments. And she was like, you're processing a trauma, call your rabbi. So I emailed, I was like, if you have a minute in the next month, let me know. And he called my cell 10 minutes later, and I was on the phone with him for 2 hours. And it was this really long, we've all been having this existential crisis since October 7th, and he talked me through it. And not only did he talk me through it, but he then said, why don't you switch your kids to this school? And I was like, it's in Koreatown. I live in Sherman Oaks. And
Just a little commute.
a little bit. And also, there's all the reasons. And then it ended up being the best decision. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and that it's not this bubble of like-mindedness. It's the opposite. It's it's values-based, and it's pursuing education, and they're learning so much, and their brains are turned on, and, it's such a beautiful gift.
And when you switch schools, the class or the choir, right, was invited. Tell us about the galaxy. Now you know which galaxy I'm talking about.
So that now I know. So right when we switched, my kids joined the choir, and and they didn't know any of the songs, so I thought it was a really great opportunity for them to, just get fully immersed, and it's such a beautiful experience. And the Galaxy soccer team was doing a Jewish Heritage Night, which I want to say, Dodgers do not do a Jewish Heritage Night anymore, which is insane because Sandy Koufax was,
Okay, and by the way, that is something that if enough people maybe complain about, that can be, those are the small things we can do, right? We can advocate for something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyone who's listening on the streaming, the Dodgers no longer do Jewish Heritage Night, and it would be great if we could change that. And Galaxy did, and they invited the school choir to sing the national anthem at a professional soccer game. And my first reaction was like, "Wow, that's amazing," and my second reaction was, "No, absolutely not." It was the summer of 2020, so to go to a stadium and to have my children announce, it was just my daughter at the time, that she was Jewish in front of a stadium full of people was terrifying to me. I was like, there's no way that we're doing this. And every parent had the same reaction. They were all just like, no. I called my brother, and he's like, absolutely not. Let's not do this. And then we all just started to talk about it. And we got in the chat, and we were like, okay, what are the parameters of is the temple setting us with security? Yes, they're setting us with so much security, and then we called Galaxy. We're Jewish moms, so we're like, we overthink everything. And, Stacey is the best example of a Jewish mom. Like, this is like such a prepared panel. And that's one of the best things about switching to the school. Like, I'm such an overthinker and over-preparer and over this. And I'm matched with that, at the school and on this panel.
And by the way, I want to say,
with all these
Orami
people.
is very prepared too. Debbie
And
had-
Orami, exactly.
Debbie was very prepared.
I mean, this is another level of prepared. This is like, I've been so, but it's, it's so nice to be matched in that preparedness. And, so we called Galaxy, and he explained that they were doing Jewish Heritage Night, but they weren't advertising it so publicly that they were going to get trolled, and they had like this whole method to it. And all these answers were like so great. And then we decided as a community that if we didn't go to Jewish Heritage Night, they wouldn't do it again. So we got a suite. Luckily for Galaxy, it was not that expensive. No offense, Galaxy. And, and we invited our friends, and we invited our families, and we like really turned up. And we had this beautiful experience, where my daughter got to sing the national anthem at a professional sporting event through, a Jewish organization. Like, that is a core memory that I will have for the rest of my life. And, and that, it was such an example of being a Jewish parent where you assess the risk. You don't act like there isn't a risk. There's always a risk to go to Israel. Even, if you're going to Israel, we thought it was safe October 5th, so, but you don't not go because of that. You just do all the preparedness, and then you go anyway, and you show up, and you be an example of a Jew out in public. And yeah, it was a really beautiful experience that we got to partake in, and a really good lesson for me about like what that fear is to process.
Beth, we were not planning on talking about this, but you have kids that are a little bit older. I didn't really quite realize how young Anna was until she said, "Oh, I might know your son. He's close to my age." Not that far off, though. So, Beth, how old are your kids? Your kids are a little older, right?
Yes, I have 3 kids. They are 25, 23, and 21.
So, I was very lucky in that my kids were not in school during COVID. They'd all graduated. And my kids were not on a college campus after October 7th. But you had kids that were on a college campus.
Yes, 2 of our kids were on college campuses. And it was really interesting. Our middle son is much more observant than we are. He wears a kippah. He turns his phone off on Shabbat. And he was at an Ivy League school. And he tried to turn a blind eye to it, but it was really tough. There was a lot of protests on his campus. And while he himself didn't feel threatened, I was worried about him constantly. Our daughter, on the other hand, the one of the the necklace, actually wears 3 different Judaica necklaces and doesn't really care what other people think. So she was going to school in New York City. She's at Parsons, and she had to walk through the new school, which is Parsons is part of the new school. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the new school. It's very, very progressive. In this day and age, that's code for pro-Palestinian, as you all know. So they were way on sort of this side of things. And Parsons is across the street from NYU, which also at the time was not very friendly toward us. And she would just walk every day right through all of that and go to class, more annoyed because it was disrupting her class. But they were marching and boycotting and barricading doors, and it was not fun.
Did they also have the experience? I know that my kids had this experience of having things pop up on their feed from people that, they would never think would post things that were saying pro-Palestinian
Yes.
as being light,
Yes, I know that our daughter definitely did, and then she would talk with her friends about it, which I think is fabulous. And I know we'll talk about food in a minute because we'll talk about my essay. But part of her way of dealing with this is to have friends over for Shabbat and to make challah and to bring people in, so to speak. Or like your daughter and the latkes. It's sort of the same idea. When you educate people, they realize.
Yeah, when you break bread together, right?
Yeah.
Before we talk about your essay and bread, I do want to mention you had an experience, Liz, on a college campus where it wasn't directed directly against you. So you were back at I'll brag for you, at your alma mater, University of Pennsylvania, giving a book talk, right, on the majority. And what happened?
Yeah, so it was just a couple weeks after October 7th, and the book had come out that summer, and so I was looking forward to this fall part of the tour and this full circle moment being back at my alma mater. And I was, scheduled to do this talk, and we got an email that morning saying that there's going to be a walkout during lunch, which is at the same time as the event. And so it just probably won't be that many people there as a result. I was like, okay, it's fine. And then we did the event, and then they said, oh, do you want to say anything? I'm like, nope, I'm not going to make a comment about this now. We're here to talk about the novel. And then we're having a back and forth. I was doing this event with my college professor in creative writing, so it felt like very full circle and very exciting. And we got to the point in the novel, she'd asked me a question because it's a novel about it's an imagining of the life of a first fictional female Supreme Court justice, inspired by the second, so I affectionately call it my RBG novel. So she's Jewish, and it's a very Jewish novel as well. And so she has various Holocaust background, as well. And so I had just finished telling the story I just told all of you about my family, about what inspired that part of the novel. And literally, just as that happened, the march had come all around the school. And this was at Penn, right when, I don't know if you watched all the news, but they were tearing down posters and it made the national news and everything. And that walk had just come around, and they were so loud that they drowned us out, and we had to stop altogether. And it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't directed at me. I was in nothing, but it correlated with that exact moment. And it was live streamed. There was like a camera on my face. There's all these people in the audience. And it was like, what do I do right now? We just sat there in silence. We waited for the protesters to finish. We waited for them to stop, or not to stop, to pass. They did. And then somebody from the audience said something about like, well, I guess they should have heard that story first. But yeah, it was quite eerie.
So Beth, back to you now. Your essay is called Braiding Ourselves Together One Hall at a Time. And I thought we would talk to you last because with everything that's happening, there's so much stress and anxiety and fear, disconnection from people that are different than us. And your background is really interesting. So you were a doctor, and then you kind of found challah. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and then about your essay?
Yes, of course. I'm an internist by trade, and I am also as a child, a Christmas tree Jew. Grew up very, very Reform in Ohio. Didn't know anything about challah. I thought it came in a plastic bag at the Jewish New Year, and that was it. I didn't know people actually made this bread. And fast forward, I'm in New York City, finishing my training and having we have 3 children, but the boys were born in New York, so I meet all kinds of wonderful Jewish people at that time with our kids. Now, fast forward, we're back in Ohio, and I'm a stressed out mom of 3 children. I'm working at the Cleveland Clinic. I can barely get the kids and myself out the door in the morning. And one of these lovely New York women calls me at Rosh Hashanah and says, what are you doing? You're going to make challah, right? Like, there's like a pregnant pause. I'm like, no. And the most wonderful thing happened. I actually did. I listened to Abby and I made challah. It's the recipe that's in the book. It's the recipe I still make every Friday. It's from the JCC in Manhattan from a mommy and me class for 2 and 3-year-olds. We could all make challah right now. It's very simple. But the most profound thing happened when I did it the first time. And I think it changed my life for sure. I mean, I'm here. But I think it saved my life. Because I had physician burnout then, and it was not a term we talked about. I wouldn't have told you I had it if you had looked at me and said I had it. I didn't know I had it. I was completely stressed out. And standing at that kitchen counter, trying to mix flour and yeast, I didn't worry about my patients. I didn't worry about my kids. I wasn't signing permission slips and stepping on Legos and thinking about EKGs or nothing. I just was trying to crack some eggs and stir some sugar, right? And then that smell, for those of you who have made challah before, or made anything, baked anything, when it's baking, that aroma, right? I was hooked. I wound up writing a book about it, my first book, my memoir, Braided: A Journey of 1,000 Challahs. And since the book came out right before COVID, and the downside was I didn't get to go on a big book tour. The upside was I started doing virtual challah workshops, but not just baking bread workshops, more health and wellness workshops where we bake bread as well. I think challah is the perfect metaphor for talking about so many of life's lessons. I've now given a lot of these workshops around the country. And as a result, I've learned a lot. And what's been really impactful for me since October 7 in particular has been the ability to work with non-Jews and to take this very innocuous bread that has such a rich history and means so much to us as Jewish people, but to take it, everybody knows what challah is. If you give anybody challah anywhere, it doesn't matter who they are. Everybody knows what challah is, right? They've had challah French toast, or who knows why. It's in Trader Joe's. Everybody knows what challah is. It's a very easy way to connect with people, and I have found so much meaning in that. So my essay in the book is about an experience I had when I was making challah with a group at a resort, at a health and wellness resort just across the border in Tecate, Mexico. And I've gone a few times where I've made challah with them. And it was the most incredible experience to be at this sacred site. Where this place is at the base of a very sacred mountain for the natives, I was gonna say Native Americans, but I guess they are, in Mexico. That area is very spiritual. And so to be standing at the base of this mountain with Jewish people, non-Jewish people, men, women, people from other countries, some who knew what challah was, thank you, some who didn't. I found it to be really affirming for myself. Thank you. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. And I found it for the others as well. So that's what I write about in the book, and I'm continuing to seek out that wherever I can, because as you said, when you bake bread together, when you make bread and you eat together, it's incredible, right?
You also have a special practice when you make challah. So you don't just make the challah, you set intentions.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about your intention setting, particularly after October 7th? Because I know, well, you know what? Tell us what you used to set the intentions for, because I think it's kind of nice when your kids are younger, and then how it changed.
Yeah, it has changed. So I learned this marvelous thing. I got to make challah in Israel in 2012. And a Rebbitzin explained to us that at the beginning, when you've set everything out and you're about to make the bread, it's an opportunity to set an intention and to think about in whose merit you wish to make the bread. I think that's so beautiful. So I do that now. And what does that mean? It can mean all kinds of things. It can be, as you said with my kids when they were little, if they'd studied for a math test that week and that was a big deal, I made it in the merit of that. It could be, and for the last several years, a dear friend of ours has been battling cancer, and I would include him every week as I was thinking about in whose merit I wish to make the dough. You mentioned RBG. I had a really cool experience of making challah with a group of women. It was already planned the week that she had passed away. The cool experience was not that she passed away. The cool experience was that the women, it was a virtual workshop, and the women started unmuting and talking about how RBG's legal decisions had impacted their lives. This was a group of older women. It was so beautiful. Post-October 7, I was including the hostages each week as I was making dough and thinking about them. So it can run the gamut, but it's a really powerful way. And what I love about it is that it's something you can take with you out of the kitchen, so to speak. So you can bring intention into your life in other ways as well. It's actually one of the benefits I love about this whole practice of making challah, is that so much of what we learn in the kitchen we can take with us outside of the kitchen, which I think is so important for us overall.
And you also have a name for this, like challah diplomacy.
Yes. So challah diplomacy is an expression that a friend of ours coined when you share challah with others. So we think about diplomacy, we all really know what that means, and we don't normally think about challah, but in this case, I think it's a really apt description. And every week I make 2 chalot for Shabbat, and we often have, well, we don't often, but I try and make extra as well so that we do have extra. And I share it and I give it away. And it can be to all different people. And I think it's really important. And one of my favorite activities here in LA was I got to make challah with a group of kids at, in Sherman Oaks, there's a Catholic high school. And they have a Jewish student group at this Catholic, the high school is called Notre Dame in Sherman Oaks. Okay, I didn't realize, A, about the high school before this, and B, I didn't realize that they actually had a Jewish student group. These kids brought me in to make challah with them, but one of the kids was doing a community service project with the North Hollywood Interfaith Food Bank. So the kids, we all made the dough, as is custom with my workshop, and then you take the dough home and you braid and bake it. They took it home and to wherever they brought back 1 loaf each, so they brought back half, and this other student then took it and donated it. So imagine, a Catholic school has a Jewish student group that then gives half of the challah away to the North Hollywood Interfaith Food Bank. I mean, if that's not challah diplomacy.
I love it. I love it. My kids, well, they're going to know now because I think they're watching. They're all getting the book because I'm going to expect challah when I visit them.
I like that.
And I think I'm going to start, my husband will be happy to know I'm going to start making challah on Friday nights too. I do want to talk a little bit more about this idea of building community and literally braiding cultures together through food and cooking. When you eat together, that's a really important thing to building relationships. And I actually spoke about this at the Skirball. One year at CSUN, I had, for some reason, like 14 Saudi students, all male, in my class, international students. It was about 10 years ago. And at that point, I was a little bit more energetic and younger. I used to invite my students to our home for a barbecue. And these Saudi men, they were like 18, 19, but men, they all came to my house. And we had a barbecue in the backyard. And it was such a wonderful opportunity to bridge cultures because, they spent a semester with me. I'm Jewish, I'm female, they're Muslim, they're male. Very different. My husband grilled them on lots of questions, and you can ask him what he asked later. He's over there. But it was so amazing that we shared this meal together and formed connections. So there must be some of those like connection stories too that you've had, like aha moment.
Yes, I've had the opportunity to make challah with some church groups, for example, and I know now that one of the churches, sometimes for the offering on Sundays, uses challah, and right, it's incredible. There's something magical when you sit down at a table with someone and you share a meal, and we see this across other cultures and in other ways as well. There's a term actually called commensality, when you come together around a meal. You know, when you think about firemen at a fire station, it's sort of the same way. There's a bonding that happens, and challah is such a great way to bring people together and to share a meal together. So I see it a lot.
Another great way to bring people together is to walk around carrying this book, and when you're waiting anywhere, to read it. Because I'll tell you what, I told you what happened to me today. I had to get a tire replaced. I'm going to do some free, I guess, advertisement for him at Hank's Tires. And while I was waiting for the tire, I took out my book, and I'm preparing, and I'm rereading the essays for tonight. And it's no longer Hank, it's Steve, Hank's son. He comes in and he goes, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I show him, and he goes, "I have been really struggling with being Jewish now." He goes, "I'm Jewish." He goes, "I have a mezuzah up." He goes, "After October 7th, I started receiving death threats." People were sending death threats to Steve at Hank's Tires. And he also then went on to share. I said, "Well, why don't you come tonight?" And he goes, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't." I said, "But maybe you could buy the book." And he said he did want to buy the book and read it. He also then shared that his wife wanted to take down the mezuzah at their house because they were afraid. But he insisted on leaving the mezuzah up at Hank's Tires. He also said that his son at UCLA was afraid to wear a Jewish star. So just by walking around with this book and reading it and having people see you read it, it opens up the conversation. And kind of like the Jewish star that you were saying, it's like, oh, you're a safe space. Like, I can share this story with you, you know? So since writing this book, contributing to this book, can you tell us what's changed for you? I mean, I think a lot's changed for you, right?
Yes, I didn't realize the wonderful community. I mean, just starting with that, the fact that there are 75 authors and advocates who run across the gamut. You know, we're not all the same, but we all share this belief that we need to stand up together. I found that incredible, and it's been such a source of joy since then.
And Anna?
I mean, my whole life has changed since October 7th, because I now go to an entire different school, and I'm, a vocal advocate of my Judaism, which it was always here, and I just wasn't outward. And, I've had a ton of connection, and I look forward to changing more. One of the things I love about being Jewish and I love about Israel is that every time I go, it's a really intense thought experiment, not experiment, like that minimizes it, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's not simple to be Jewish. It's not simple to be Jewish today. It's not going to be simple to be Jewish next year. We don't know what else is going to happen. And what I get to do is, continue to grow through this and to learn and change, and, I'm open to it, so.
And Liz? Because we're friends. Now I can call you Liz.
That's right. I think I've always been very public about being Jewish, and I've been very, like, in everything I've written, there's some sort of Judaism in there. And so what I've gained since writing this book is the community, which is wonderful and beautiful. And what I wanted to say is, what you're talking about, like what happened at Hank's Tires today with the book, or the idea of when you're wearing the Jewish star. I named my kids Avital and Levi. They're very Jewish names, always, and so it was something that was important for us. My husband was born in Israel, but he left when I was 6 months old, so I call him a fake Israeli. But anyway, he doesn't speak Hebrew, but like he goes by Abba. He had an Abba, so he goes by Abba, which was a transition for me because I had a dad. But our kids call him Abba. And so one thing my daughter does now is I guess it's the same idea. It's nothing to do with, I don't think it's anything to do with October 7th. I think it has everything to do with just kind of being proud as a Jew, is, the same idea of when you wear a Jewish star. When she sees somebody who is publicly Jewish, or somebody's wearing a kippah, or somebody's wearing tzitzit, or something out there, or she overhears people speaking Hebrew in any sort of a public place, she very loudly is like, "Oh, Mom, we should go talk to Abba and tell Levi about dinner." Tribe. And it's very cute. And this happens not infrequently, because we live in Encino, but.
Yeah, I think, for us living in Los Angeles and being part of the 0.2%, we forget that we're part of the 0.2%. But, it's important for us to, I don't want to say to be an example, but we are sort of an example, right? And to, be good advocates for Jews and for Judaism. I think, are we on time to start asking questions? And we'll pass it down.
Pass it down. Take one and pass it down. Is it on? Oh, it's on. It's just slow. I was thinking our wonderful authors are going to set up tables, or we have already set up tables, and they have brought their other books with them. So I was thinking we might prefer to use the time for people to talk with you one-on-one in book signing instead of doing a big Q&A right now. We're at a little after 8 o'clock. Does that sound good to you guys?
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, mix and mingle. So let me just, did you have anything
Oh,
you wanted to
I
close
was just
with?
going to say, I do have the links if anybody is now inspired to share their story and wanted to write an essay. You can take a picture, and this is how you would submit to Zibby Owens Media, and maybe your story will be sent out to everybody, because I think everybody's story is important, and everybody has a unique experience.
Can I just add to the submitting to the Substack? I do just want to share her prompt that she gave us, because to me it was really helpful, because I think I could have written this story a lot of different ways. And part of my hesitation to write it is I didn't want to add to the chaos of everything. And so I really loved her prompt. So I just want to share it in case anybody is inspired to submit. Imagine that you're meeting a friend that you haven't seen in a while, but a close friend, and you're telling them what it's like to be Jewish since October 7th. And I think you don't necessarily have to do that prompt, but for me it was helpful to have a very specific ear to my story and, what that was.
And there's so many ways.
There's so many ways to
you're
do
all
it, but I
writers,
just want to
there's many
share,
ways,
because I
yeah.
do think everybody, whether you identify as a writer or not, has a story about their own Judaism percolating. And I encourage everybody to write it right now, and share it. We have these great hats Zibby has that says, "Jewish stories are best when told." So I want to implore everybody to write their own.
Is
Beautiful.
it okay if there's a couple people that have a fast question?
Yeah, it's just a question of time because we have dessert and schmoozy time, and we have security and stuff like that. So do we want to just take one question? Oh.
Does anybody have a burning question?
Anyone have a burning question? We were thinking people could also talk and ask each other questions and share stories during our ONEG after this event.
Okay.
Oh, you do have it. Okay.
I'm at the Skirball Book Club with Stacy, and she's fabulous in the club. But you asked us a question. Sorry. You asked us a question about which authors we want to read after reading Home Fire, about the 5,000 authors that are against Jewish writers, or
So there was a list that came out in Literary Hub, and it was spearheaded by some very prominent authors, probably authors that you have read, that boycotted Israeli cultural institutions and authors. that list has grown to like over 5,000 names now that are on that list.
So Stacy asked us how we felt about it. And the book club was pretty silent, and one of the participants said she doesn't mind. And I walked out of class thinking nothing of it. But it's really bothered me this week, actually. I think thinking about it more, and how I posed it to my children and to my husband and to my niece, who's actually a rabbi at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. She's one of the new rabbis, Leah Lerman. And I want to know how you guys feel about that as authors, as Jews, as women, as parents, how you guys feel about reading books of authors that, want to see our demise. I mean, that's really the bottom question, the end question for me. Anyone can do it. I mean, just.
And this is a very heated topic in that there's censorship issues and art, and it's a very complicated topic with and you can look up the list. I mean, Percival, am I saying it right? Percival Everett, Sally Rooney is on that list. So authors that you probably are reading. Some of them are Jewish as well. This could be a whole other panel on this one.
I don't have an answer to the question, but I love the question, and yeah, I think that it's something that I will share. I have a family member that, has posted insane things, and I texted them and, tried to get them to talk about it, and they're teenagers, and I was just really fraught about it, and asked a bunch of people for advice, and then the rabbi leader is the one that gave me the really good advice, and he said, every generation is going to have their moment where they kind of like wake up to what it means to be Jewish, and let them have theirs, and be a good example of Judaism and still be in their lives, and, let them. And I don't know that I feel that way, and it has influenced my reading for sure, but I don't know that that's the right choice. I just don't have an answer. There's not, because I don't want to be somebody who wants to cancel other people because of their opinions, because I also do think that it is such a traumatic experience, and that there is generational trauma, that I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and let them experience their trauma in their own way, and hope that they will come around in some way, shape, or form, in the way that I'm sure that I have had wrong opinions and then come around, or not. I might have a wrong opinion right now. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just saying all that to say, I don't have an answer for it, and it's a really good question. And I want to ask more people about it, and I want to ask for answers, but I don't have them.
I love that question, because I've been really struggling with it. When I saw Sally Rooney's name on it when it first came out, it was just really heartbreaking, because I really liked her books. And my first gut is, I guess I can't read her anymore. And I know that's wrong. So it's a really hard one. I canceling writers and artists, and we can't do that. And yet, you're right, they're not interested in us. To hold those two thoughts, it's really, I'm still struggling with it, but it has impacted what I read.
Have you sent her a holla?
I should. I have not. Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be fun? Go right down the list.
Well, 5,000 challahs you'll be baking and counting. And by the way, that list also applies now to, there's television, movies, producers, directors, the list goes on and on. So it is a really complicated issue, and two things can be true at the same time. They're wrong to do it, and maybe we don't want to have censorship.
Yeah, I think that that is so perfectly stated. And I think, the title of this whole evening defines that, it's complicated. And I keep thinking, and it goes back to kind of, I guess, my experience my whole life is that and maybe it's a little Pollyanna-ish, and I don't consider myself that kind of a person, but maybe it is a little hopeful that I don't believe that most people who signed that truly want our demise.
Like the young kids on college campuses that chanted not understanding what they were chanting, or were protesting not realizing if you protest, elbow to elbow, despite what you think about the politics in Israel, when you're, protesting elbow to elbow with somebody who's, calling for the end of Israel, that's different, right? So, I mean, there is an education
Yeah, I think
component.
I think that's a huge part of it. I don't think it's everything, certainly. I think that's a huge factor. I mean, the more I go out there outside of places like LA, the more you realize people just don't know. When they haven't met a Jew, they don't understand the history. They don't know who we are. And so I actually have tried to do this kind of thing of like inviting non-Jews to Shabbat dinners and try to invite them, because it's like that's what I'm not comfortable talking about geopolitics or the Middle East. I'm comfortable talking about my experience with Judaism and my experience with anti-Semitism and my experience as being a proud Jew. And that's kind of what I always try to bring it back to. And so are people on these lists, some of them hateful? Probably. Are some of them ignorant? Probably. And there's this phenomenal book that I could not recommend more, which has nothing to do with Judaism or this topic, but it's called, and so I'm not calling anybody on any list a monster, but this book is called Monster, and yeah, you've read it. It's by Claire Dieter, and it's about, she kind of looks at these extraordinary artists who are, and she looks at people like Harvey Weinstein and objective, monsters in the world. But then, but he created some incredibly beautiful pieces of art. And it's a whole book kind of commenting and analyzing and coming to terms with separating the art from the artist. And I think it's such important read.
There's another great book, which I've been plugging, although people don't want to read it. It's called The Director by Daniel Kellman. It's really fabulous because it talks about this idea of art and can you separate art from politics, art from the artist from the ideology. But it's a good read. Daniel Kellman, it was like Colbert's late night pick. Talks about fascism. So it's an interesting read, but a hard one. I'm going to admit that. It's a very hard one. Okay, I think that was a great question. And
Great question.
that was a burning question.
It was
so
awesome.
I really want to thank everybody, and now I'll pass it back to you, Debbie.
Okay, I even have a mic. Thank you all for coming this evening. Let's give a round of applause for our amazing panelists. Our President Susie Gruber is going to pass out a few little gifts that we have. They're on the piano.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Amazing job. I want to thank you all, everybody. This was a fabulous book, and I want to thank you for bringing your amazing stories to us here at Congregation ORME. And we do have some thank you gifts for you.
And while Susie's getting those, I want to toss out are Karen and Leslie in here? Karen Popsky and Leslie Kraut are the geniuses behind the scenes who made, there's Leslie, who put this whole event together. There's Karen Popsky hiding in the back over there. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to our ORME staff, Laura Wall and Isela Alcala, who did a lot of work behind the scenes, answering 5 million emails from me. We'd also really like to thank Zibby Owen, Zibby Media, and the Artists Against Anti-Semitism, because obviously without them, this event wouldn't have taken place, this book wouldn't have taken place, and we're enormously grateful. Keep in mind the Substack, and if there's one more thing that you would like to do to elevate Jewish voices, buy books by Jewish authors. You have an anthology now, hopefully, of some good voices to read and see who resonates. And our 3 Jewish authors are going to go out there, and they did bring some of their other books that they've written if you would like to purchase them. The people who bought on Being Jewish Now for the pre-sale, those are already pre-autographed, but if you want to bring them up to the table to have them write in your name or any other kind of dedication, I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. And we hope you'll join us for a really lovely dessert that Karen organized for us. And thank you so much for coming.